So last week, Time Magazine put out the top 100 podcasts of all time. It was universally hated. Everybody who said there were glaring omissions. There was no Joe Rogan. There was no Pardon My Take. Where's Joe Budden? No Bill Burr. Major comics, original podcasters, huge numbers, all left off the list. So what I did is put together the real top 100 podcasts of all time. In no particular order, here they are. Now, as it scrolls here, I'm going to give you a little insight into what I was thinking while I made the list. I'm sure there are podcasts on the top Time 100 list that make a lot of money and are very popular, but there's no personality behind it. These are not shows that people know, that normal people listen to. This is a list of, if you met someone randomly for the first time, you said, oh, I listen to XYZ, they would say, oh, so do I, or I know that podcast, or I follow that host. They know the name and the face and the personality. These are people and shows real fan bases. Originally, in the interest of being impartial and not self-serving, I was not going to include my podcast, KFC Radio, on the list. However, after actually analyzing it, I think we deserve to be in there. Not one of the biggest or the most successful, but one of the most influential. I tried to do a good mix of pioneers and legacy podcasts and the modern-day juggernauts today. And these are specifically just podcasts, not just media personality. You have to have a successful pod. Now, breaking it down by genre. Right off the bat, number one, Joe Rogan gets his own genre. He's the GOAT. It's insane that he was never included. You can read on here about some of the numbers he's done, the money he's made, the download he's done. He's not only a pioneer, but currently the biggest in 2025. It was insane he was never on the list in the first place. These were the big four that I felt were the biggest snubs. I just talked about Joe Rogan. There's also Joe Budden. Joe Budden's making $1 million a month on Patreon, $20 million a year. He's been doing it since like 2010. He's probably the next guy up to make like a $500 million deal with some major media company. The New York Times just did an expose on how he's one of the most powerful and influential people. Complex just named him number one in black media. The fact he wasn't on the list was insane. Had to give a shout out to my boys, Pardon My Take. They're the perfect podcast. I was actually surprised they weren't on the Time list because they float between the mainstream and the degenerate Barstool fans. The best sports podcast in the world day in and day out for like a decade straight. Bill Burr doing the quintessential podcast, just a guy and a mic answering questions and talking about life. That is basically the foundation for which podcasts were built on. The Bodega Boys, to me, the funniest podcast of all time in their prime. Jesus Knights and the Kid Miro. There's not a duo on the planet that is funnier than these guys. This breakup absolutely killed me. The Basement Yard, a good example of a podcast that someone like Time Magazine would never be on their radar, and they wouldn't make that list, but if you know who they are and you see what they're doing, it's insane. Completely independent. Two buddies who just hop on the mic and chop it up. They just sold out Madison Square Garden, the arena, in 12 minutes. Here's a list of all the pioneers and legacy podcasts that basically created this industry. The Adam Carolla Show was one of the first and biggest. Combat Jack and One-Up in the hip-hop world. Nerdist for all things culture. Opie and Anthony was more of the Sirius XM radio side of things, but it gave birth to Jim Norton and Sam Roberts and other podcasts. Smodcast with Kevin Smith is often forgotten about. He's a forefather. And Tom Green basically invented this. If you haven't seen the clip of Joe Rogan on his show where he realizes what podcasting is, without Tom Green, there might not be Joe Rogan. Here's the list once again, but broken down by genre. By the way, I understand why people get these lists wrong on purpose to get clickbait, because this is a pretty comprehensive list, and everybody read it, and they were like, yeah, that's pretty good. And it doesn't go viral, it doesn't get all the attention. So give this the right attention, because these are the people who deserve it.